Welcome everyone to the October meeting of the Sustainability Commission. So we've got a really interesting meeting here with a lot of subject matter experts that we're going to be talking about, or that we're going to be sharing their information with us. And we formatted it just slightly different than we do normal meetings because we have a few more speakers. First of all, we're going to organize things into two sections, really. It's environmental justice, and we're going to discuss that, kind of talking about how it relates to the master plan, and then we're going to have our subject matter experts come and talk for a little bit in what we're calling lightning round talks, and having several folks come from several different agencies representing lots of different stakeholders to share some information with us today. So we're excited to get started with that. And our other co-chair, Mia Blom, is currently out today, so Ava and I will be running the meeting. And from that, I'll hand it over to you, Ava, to see if you have any Office of Sustainability updates to share.
Yes, I do. Good evening. Again, everyone, thank you all so much for joining the October 2025 Commission on Sustainability meeting. And I want to give a special thank you to all of our speakers who are here this evening. Really excited to hear about all the amazing work that you all are doing. A few announcements to share. Number one, we have released the 2024 annual sustainability report. I'm going to drop a link into the chat that will link you directly to the report. Please check it out and learn about some of the progress that we have made collectively as a city towards our goals. Roughly 92% of all the 244 actions in the sustainability plan have been advanced to a point of early stages or beyond. And so we measure each of the actions in the plan on a 5-point scale. And so roughly in total, 11% of those actions have actually been fully implemented. But we have some summary numbers in the document to share with folks where we are in terms of the status of implementing on various initiatives and priorities. And we also provide specific data, metrics, and measures, as well as stories to share that progress. So I will put that link in the chat, and please take a look, and you'll see us posting highlights from our on our social media accounts as well. And so I think many of you all have likely heard, but if not, we're happy to share with everyone that the Department of Planning has a new director, Mr. Timothy King. And I don't know if Tim is on the call yet, but we did want to give him an opportunity to introduce himself to everybody. Excited to have him join us here in Baltimore City after his long career, or as he has many years of a career in urban planning. Tim, did you want to introduce yourself? And, you know, we're going to wait till he comes on. I think he's pretty popular, has a lot of meetings, and has been pretty busy. So we'll circle back and to introductions to Tim. All right, so I'll pass it back to Jared to do the roll call for the commission and other updates.
Okay, so I will start here with the roll call for commissioners here. You know what? Usually either Amy or you are there to help. So as I call out folks, I will mark here, and I might just be a little bit slower than usual. So Jared Lyles, I'm here. Stephanie Smith. Regina T. Boyce. Alicia Porter.
Hello, I think you called me.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm kind of between two screens at the moment, too, checking off people on the roll call. So yeah, if you can unmute yourself and just say here, then that's helpful. if you just raise your hand, then Ava, if you can just let me know if someone's there, since I'm in the other screen with the attendance, just marking it off. So was that Stephanie Smith? I think I heard that she was here.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Okay. Jared Lyles, I'm here. Inez Robb. Okay. Ben Zychek said he actually might be running a little bit behind today.
Ben Zychek's present. Sorry, biting the mute button.
Okay, perfect. Lisa Ferretto.
I am present.
Nicolette Lousaint. Okay. Brian Smith. Bill Joyner. Gary Crum. Phil Costa.
Here.
All right. Morgan Grove reached out a little bit earlier and said he might not be able to make it today. And I just see Nicolette just came in. And then Earl John. Okay. And Nicolette, I actually just saw you come into the chat. Just want to see if you're here.
I'm here.
Okay, perfect. And it looks like Tim actually just came into the lobby. If we want to just pause for a second.
Absolutely. Tim, we wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself. Thank you so much for joining. If you want to come off camera and just introduce yourself and tell folks on our sustainability commission a little bit about yourself.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me, Eva? Yeah,
yes,
good. Hi, I'm Tim Keene. I've just joined the planning department 2 weeks ago at the end of September, October 1st, as the new planning director. And thank you for this just brief moment to introduce myself. I have been working in planning for a little while and in cities, and most recently in Charleston, South Carolina. But I spent a lot of time in Charleston. Also was planning commissioner in Atlanta, Georgia for 7 years. Spent some time out west working for cities, and now here, thankfully, in Baltimore, and really excited about it. I'll say that I'm especially impressed by what I've already learned about what Ava and her team are doing in Baltimore and your contribution to that, your leadership on these issues. I'm really interested in the work that you're doing and all the issues around being a sustainable city and one that's adapting to a changing climate and more generally, becoming a richer city in terms of its natural environment as it grows. All those things being kind of central to our work as a city and certainly to the work of the planning department. I feel like this work is essential and should be integral to everything that we're doing, not a separate matter, but the matter when it comes to a growing city. A city like Baltimore, as you all know, especially a place that's saying we want our population to grow. Not only do we want it, we need it to grow in so many ways. We need more people living here. We need, in some places, more density, and we need, a vibrant neighborhoods. Well, part of that, of course, is adapting to climate and nature being repaired and thriving in that process. And so I see it as one outcome that we're seeking, and all of these things being so much a part of it. So I'm expressing myself this way just to make sure that, you know, I very much am interested in elevating the work of the commission and the work of Ava's team. Not that it isn't already, but you know what I mean, that I really have this commitment to the city being successful when it comes to this work in the context of all the other things the city is seeking to achieve and residents of Baltimore expect for the city. So that has been something that I have really concentrated on everywhere, and am especially excited to work with you on it here in Baltimore for residents of the city. So thank you. Would it be appropriate to ask if there's any questions? Does anyone have a question for me? I think I said my name. It's Tim Keene. Yeah.
Welcome questions from any of our commissioners.
Or comments. Comments are fine too, you know.
We look forward to having you here and working with you on the Sustainability Commission as well.
Thank you for that. I sincerely appreciate it and look forward to it myself. Thank you for this time.
Well, Jarrett, thank you so much, Tim. We're looking forward to working with you and really appreciate your willingness to engage in this work and be a collaborator and a partner and a leader to bring us toward a more sustainable city. So, Jarrett, I'll pass things back to you. I think we were in the middle of the roll call, and I'll pass it back to you. And Jared, I don't know if you're having technical difficulties. It looks like you went off camera. Okay, we may have lost Jared. So we're going to continue on and get into the connections that tonight's theme of environmental justice has to our different plans across the city. So on the next slide, just to walk through the agenda again. So we're going to talk about how the theme of environmental justice connects to our work, particularly in the sustainability plan, with the equity implementation guidance, as well as our guiding principles in some of our other plans. So in the 2019 sustainability plan, it was really built on a foundation with an understanding that an equity lens to this work is critical, particularly looking at racial equity and incorporating certain equity considerations into our work. In the plan, we have these equity implementation guidelines that include considerations such as defining the project's purpose or intent in such a way that does not perpetuate inequities or disparities among populations, looking at budget and planning processes and procedures to ensure that there's equity considered in that work. Also looking at relevant data and information to help us understand how we are pursuing parity and equity in this work in some measurable way, seeking inclusive community engagement, and doing, to the extent that we can, apply an equitable impact analysis that looks at accessibility in terms of accessibility or language accessibility in terms of mobility or various challenges that different populations have. Also looking at capacity building for our community-based organizations or other entities seeking to pursue this work, considering and thinking about alignment with other city priorities. Also considering the disproportionate impacts that some communities may deal with when it comes to environmental exposures or proximity to polluting industries, as well as economic opportunity and displacement. Accountability is also a really key part of these equity considerations, because we all know it does no one any good to have plans and actions that don't have some measures of accountability for actually being implemented. So on the next slide, we just go into a little bit more detail of that racial equity lens and how we frame it in the plan. A lot of this work really began under the leadership, I have to say, of our assistant director, Stephanie Smith, and many folks across the planning department who helped to lead the pathway towards equity legislation across the city that requires equity officers within each city agency. And we'll hear a little bit more about that piece of legislation from the executive director of the Office of Equity and Civil Rights this evening as well. In our 2024 Climate Action Plan, we also have 10 guiding principles that start with centering equity, but also build upon these equity implementation guidelines from the sustainability plan and really emphasize the need to support climate resilience and sustainability as a fundamental goal, consider the long-term impacts and benefits of projects, ensuring that we're incorporating considerations for redesign, reuse, recycling, and circularity in this work, as well as fostering interagency collaboration. So we want to ensure that we are able to work strategically as a city, as city agencies, and collaboratively with city partners and organizations in pursuit of, again, that vision for a more sustainable city. And then on the next slide, we talk a little bit about, or we list the goals from our disaster preparedness plan, which again begin with ensuring equitable protections for health, safety, and welfare of all residents and those who work, play, learn, and grow in the city. And we also want to ensure that those communities and populations that are exposed to certain climate vulnerabilities, whether or not that's there's a lot of language we can use to describe whether it's frontline communities, environmental justice communities, but ensuring that the most vulnerable populations, both from a climate perspective, but also socially vulnerable groups across the city are supported, because we know those are the communities that are going to be most impacted in the event of a disaster event. Right. And on the next slide, we list out the lightning round talks for this evening. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it to our first speaker, Catalina Rodriguez Lima, who is the director of the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs. Thank you so much, Catalina, for being here this evening, and I'll pass it to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Ava mentioned, I am Catalina Rodriguez Lima. I am the founding director of the Baltimore City Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs, known as MEMA. And I do apologize for the title of this presentation is incorrect. However, the rest of the presentation is correct. So if you could just move it to the next slide, please. The mission of the Mayor's Office of Immigrant Affairs is to promote the community well-being, the economic development, and the integration of the 50,000 foreign-born individuals living in the city of Baltimore, which represent approximately 9% of the city's population. Something that we have observed is that immigrants continue to move into our city. They're one of the few sources of growth of our population, particularly around Latino immigrants, which today represent 8% of the population as well. And over the last 10 years grew 80% in its population. Some of our roles and responsibilities as an office include to advise the mayor, cabinet staff, senior staff on matters pertaining to foreign-born individuals. We also act as a technical assistance provider to city agencies on messaging, policy, strategy, laws, best practices, program design, and making sure that services and resources are equipped to serve foreign-born individuals. We also have a messaging and communications role. About 40% of our populations are limited English proficient, which means that they cannot read, write, or speak or communicate in English. And so we have a couple of communication channels where we share information in the city's 5 core languages, which includes Spanish, French, Korean, Mandarin, and Arabic. We also act as a conduit for city agencies to disseminate information, and we are able to do that based on constituencies and languages and geography. We have a community engagement role. For those who are from Baltimore, you know that our city is a city of neighborhoods. Our folks, unfortunately, are not in those platforms. And so we are often working with community groups to meet them where they are, which includes faith-based institutions, nonprofit organizations working with immigrants, civic groups that come together based on a country of origin or a language. We are out in the community at community events throughout the city, and in some cases outside of the city, knowing that immigrants are likely to frequent anchor institutions outside of our city. We also have an advocacy and policy role. We are that squeaky wheel to make sure that immigrants are not forgotten when programs, laws, and procedures are being developed. And then finally, we manage the city's language access program to ensure compliance. And what this means is that we work with city agencies to ensure language accessibility. And from that perspective, we provide technical assistance on roles and responsibilities of agencies. We provide telephonic interpretation, translation of documents, training of employees on how to work with people who can't speak English. We're not a service delivery office or division. We're an executive office under the mayor's office. However, we have two programs that provide services directly to the community, which I'm going to touch on today. The first program is the Safe City Baltimore program, which was established during the first Trump administration to provide immigration legal services for immigrants at various parts in their journey on immigration. This multi-pronged approach provides 3 levels of services for residents in the city of Baltimore. If you can think of the population in 3 groups. The population that will not qualify for any immigration relief, even if we were to provide an attorney, needs to be educated about their rights and family preparedness when ICE comes to their home or their work. The second tier of the population is those who are likely to qualify for an immigration relief, but they simply can't access an attorney because they don't have the means or they don't know that they can qualify for a resource. At this point, we have established a citywide hotline that does legal screenings and refers people to legal service providers for representation. And the third tier of folks is folks who have been arrested by ICE. At this point, we are working with nonprofit organizations that provide immigration legal services and case management support to the families behind, which is often children. The second program that we have in our office is the Baltimore New American Access Coalition. This is a bilingual, bicultural case management program that supports mixed status families. Mixed status families means parents who are U.S. citizens with parents who are undocumented with U.S. citizen children and trying to access services and resources, oftentimes out of their reach because they don't speak English or because they can't qualify or because they think they can't qualify for services. We have a coalition of service providers in partnership with CASA, Southeast CDC, and Esperanza Center that provides case management across the city as well. And then the final slide that I wanted to share with you all, some opportunities to support or volunteer in our work. One is volunteering with our office. Something that we're currently doing is canvassing neighborhoods to promote our services. We are unfortunately at a time where information related to immigration legal services can fall in the wrong hands. So we've gone back to traditional grassroots activities, talking to people directly, staying away from social media. The second one is volunteering with our program Safe City Baltimore. Volunteers can help us with intake of individuals seeking immigration legal services. And the third opportunity to support our office is donating to the Baltimore Immigrant Community Fund, which is a fund that we have in partnership with the Baltimore Civic Fund that raises financial assistance for the families left behind of those detained. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Catalina. We really appreciate you providing those updates and an overview of the work in MEMA. If folks have any questions, I know Catalina has to leave for another meeting. So if you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or ask them now. We know she won't be around later. All right, and we'll thank you again, Catalina, and we'll make sure to share these slides out following the meeting. Have a great evening, and we're going to move on to our next speaker. So the Chief Equity Officer and Director of the Office of Equity and Civil Rights, Ms. Amber Green. Please feel free to begin the presentation, and thank you so much for being here this evening. Really excited to hearing more about the office's work.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. I'm actually very excited to be able to connect with this team. I joined the city about 6 months ago as the city's Chief Equity Officer and Director of the Office of Equity and Civil Rights. Before that, I was at the White House for 2 years in the State Department leading the President's racial equity agenda. But as part of that work, I also had environmental justice within my portfolio within the Domestic Policy Council. So I'm very familiar with a lot of the issues, but definitely want to use this as an opportunity to learn more about how we can really think about how we can embed a lot of the work related to equity and environmental justice together, because sometimes they can be a little separate and you don't always have the same folks talking to one another. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to get a chance to learn more how we can, collectively move these issues forward. So I have a quick slide agenda. I'm not going to go through every single thing because I'd love to be able to have some time for questions if this group has some questions, but I'll just give you a quick overview of the Office of Equity and Civil Rights. So we are a city agency devoted to advancing equity and upholding not only federal, but also local civil rights laws. Also the local living and prevailing wage laws, which ensure access and equal opportunity. Also ensuring equal opportunity for persons with disabilities. And we also provide oversight of law enforcement within Baltimore City. So we are home to 7 divisions. That's the Police Accountability Division, Community Relations Commission, Mayor's Commission on Disabilities, the Equity Office, the Wage Commission, the Women's Commission, and the newly appointed Veterans Commission, which we they were sworn in probably about 3 weeks ago or so. So that makes up our office. We have a pretty extensive mandate. The next slide just shows in terms of what, how civil rights has progressed within Baltimore City. But I want to spend a little bit of time talking specifically about, actually, if you can go back one slide. If I think it's on here. Actually, no, you can keep going. Thank you. Okay, so I'll just give a brief overview of the Community Relations Commission in terms of some of the work that this commission is responsible for doing. So everyone, I think, is probably familiar with Title VII of the Civil, Title VII protections with respect to the Civil Rights Act. But Article 4 is what we do locally, and that means how we prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, religion, national origin, ancestry, age, sex, color, physical or mental disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or expressions of employment, public accommodations, and the list goes on and on. And so this commission is responsible for investigating those claims of discrimination that violate Article 4 of the Baltimore City Code. So we have authority to subpoena information and witnesses. We have authority to hold public hearings. But any form of discrimination that takes place under one of those categories, we're able to investigate. And so we do a lot of work in this area, specifically when it comes to employment, housing, accessibility, and accommodations. On the next slide, the next commission that we have is our Police Accountability Division. So most people know OECR by our work here. And so we have as part of the Police Accountability Division, we have a Police Accountability Board, which is also made up of civilians who receive police misconduct complaints and then provide recommendations to the mayor. And then we have the Administrative Charging Committee, which every week there are a body of 5 civilian members who are essentially like a grand jury, and they include the chair of the PAB and 4 committee members who review the investigations for complaints filed with the Police Accountability Board, and they decide on officer discipline. So officer discipline is decided in Baltimore City by civilians. That work is pretty extensive. that work includes, any form of police misconduct in those areas. And so this process has been in place since I want to say about 2022, when the state law changed to create the Police Accountability Board body. So that's the second division within OECR. Our third division, which is on the next slide, is our Commission on Disabilities. And I think there are a couple of commissions that we have and boards that may have some interest from this area, but specifically when we think about people with disabilities and how they may be at a disadvantage when it comes to emergency planning and preparedness. I spent about 10 years of my career before White House and so forth working in New York City. And I was leading our preparedness efforts there. And a lot of the work that I did was working with vulnerable populations, including people with disabilities, seniors, people with limited English proficiency, and the list goes on and on. But specifically when we think about emergency planning and how we're taking to account vulnerable populations, this is definitely an area of interest of mine, in any way that we can be helpful here. We also run an ADA coordinator network. So each city agency, in addition to some of the equity work that I'll talk about a little bit later, each city agency also has an ADA coordinator who's responsible for ensuring that city policies, procedures, and guidelines are also upheld as well. On the next slide is our Women's Commission. And so the Women's Commission also a volunteer and appointed board that's responsible for ensuring that our services and government policies and programs support women and girls and those assigned female at birth individuals within Baltimore City. And so the commission meets monthly. They hold quarterly events and outreach and engagement. Next week, as you see behind me, it is Civil Rights Week that will kick off on Friday of this week. And next week we are doing an event on Black maternal health. Those are also areas when you think about women that unfortunately go into preterm early labor because of the effects of heat and other things related to, climate impacts. It's definitely an area where there is definitely some overlap when we think about how do we ensure more healthy communities. On the next slide is our Wage Enforcement Division. So the Wage Enforcement Division ensures compliance with Baltimore City's wage laws and local construction and service projects. And we have a lot of wage theft, unfortunately, within Baltimore City when it comes to projects. And so our teams go out on site, investigating and going onto actual work sites, getting those fines, and investigating service contracts across the city. And then I believe we have the last slide, or rather the last division is our equity. Actually, I'm missing two, the equity division. And so this is where we have a lot of overlap and synergies that I think we can work together on. So the equity division is responsible for ensuring citywide that our policies, our programs, and our budgets are fair and meet the needs of Baltimore's diverse communities. And so we do that through the Equity Assessment Ordinance. So back in 2018, Baltimore City Council passed the equity ordinance to help make sure that our city residents are better served. And so that work is heavily gearing up right now. Our equity division, and you can go to the next slide. I'll come back to equity, but I'll go to veterans really quickly. So I mentioned we sworn in our new Veterans Commission. And so the Veterans Commission is responsible for providing, again, recommendations and policies related to strengthening Baltimore City's veterans community. I'll go to the next slide because I think that one is on equity. Outreach engagement, we'll skip that one because I'll talk about that in my remarks. And so environmental justice. So here's what I wanted to spend a couple of moments on while I have some opportunities. So OECR provides monthly training for a citywide network of equity coordinators. So there are equity coordinators at each city agency. We meet with them monthly to train them on capacity building, ways that they can think about ensuring equity in their budgets, their policies and programs, and doing that work to basically think about this work as a change management structure. In April 2025, I believe we hosted Ava for the Baltimore I hosted you at one of the planning commission, not the planning commission, of the equity coordinators meetings, so that we could allow for more synergies there. And so that was before my time, but I'm sure you did an amazing job. The next bullet that I wanted to talk about was related to our healthy communities pillar. So since I've been here for the past 6 months, we've been trying to revamp how we're doing the equity work so it's more impactful and we're able to get more information from city agencies. So one of the things that we've also tried to do is tie in our upcoming equity assessment in line with the comprehensive master plan. So we have a pillar specifically on healthy communities that we would be asking each agency to be able to report on their progress. And so we really think that is important because that can tie into not only the existing work that you're doing, but hopefully reinforce some of the policies work that you all are trying to do if this is not only in their comprehensive plan, but is in their equity plan, their strategic plan. So you have more of a chance of actually getting a lot of these initiatives moving forward. So those are the main things that I wanted us to be able to share today in terms of how we can create the overlap. I do want to stress that I think there are tons of opportunities for us to think about when we think about how we redesign opportunity and enhance equity and the work that we're doing citywide, that there are definitely some moments that we can include to ensure that environmental justice is part of that, because all of this work is connected. At the end of the day, we all live on one planet, we all live in one city, and we need to make sure that it works for everybody, whether it is accessibility issues, whether it is access to clean and safe transportation, and whatever needs that we need to get there for monitoring areas. I think that's definitely something that I'd like to learn more with this group about ways that we can strengthen that partnership. My contact information, I'm happy to share with the team here. You can also reach us at civilrights@baltimorecity.gov. But I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have at this time.
Well, we're so happy to have you here in Baltimore City, and so great that we can all benefit from your years of experience and the insights that you bring. And I think there are definitely many opportunities for collaboration and synergies within our work. And if you're able to stick around, you'll hear about some of the progress and efforts taking place from being led by different community-based organizations across the city that are also going to be presenting this evening. So, great.
Looking forward, and welcome to the new director, Keen. I don't think we've had a chance to meet yet, but glad you have joined the city.
Thank you. Look forward to meeting you in person.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to be off camera because I need to multitask for Civil Rights Week. So I will be listening, but I'll be off camera and available for any questions.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll pass it back to Jared to facilitate.
Okay. Well, I'll call up the next speaker from Maryland Department of Environment, Anika Atkinson, Assistant Secretary for Environmental Justice. Anika, are you with us?
I am, but I think we have the wrong presentation presenting.
Uh-oh.
This is the PDF that we have to share.
Yeah, hold on. It's in a different place than the rest of the slides. I'll pull it up. Don't worry.
Well, I'll get started. Good evening, and thank you so much, Ava, for the invitation to come before you all this evening. My name is Anika Atkinson, and I serve as the Assistant Secretary of Environmental Justice at the Maryland Department of Environment. One thing to note that drew me to Maryland, that's the correct slide, you can stay there on the second slide, yep, is that there is a definition in state law of environmental justice. So what is environmental justice under state law? It is defined as the equal protection for environmental and public health hazards for all people, regardless of race, income, or social status. So I need to kind of think about that. But we know the research shows that minority and low income communities have historically been exposed to an unbalanced share of pollution, right? But if you think about that definition, what I like to do when I read the definition is stop at regardless, because we know that all communities deserve to have equal protections for environmental health, regardless. There really doesn't need to be anything after that. We all deserve that protection, and we all should be protected, and we should all be able to have both mostly benefit from the environment by which we live. So that's the framework by which I get to do my work here at MDE. It allows the department to emphasize the need for community engagement and decision making. And it also puts the onus on us as an agency to incorporate environmental justice into our policies and programs. You can go to the next slide. I don't think my slides like to participate today. So one of the things I'll note is that I was brought on board January 2024, right? So January, it'll be 2 years, and I'm the first ever and Secretary of Environmental Justice here at MDE. And for the first year, I think, it was me, and then some of folks may have known Brandon Brooks, who was on the team that was helping me out, but then he went on to greener pastures, and I was like borrowing bodies from different areas to try to assist in a lot of the work that we've done. But this year alone, starting in March, my team has grown drastically. So if you think of March 2025 and look at the faces that we have on the screen here, the MDE team has grown, especially the EJ team has grown. So what we have here is the team that helps me realize the vision that I want for our agency, which is, it's very simple. Everyone deserves clean air, clean land, and clean water, right? That's the basis of the work I do, and then our mission as the environmental agency for the state. So in short order, we'll be releasing a newsletter where the team will introduce themselves to everyone, and I'll definitely share that with Ava so she can pass it around to the commissioners when that comes out. But just know, like, this team, and you may have seen them out and about, they've been at different events and tabling, but they're very diverse. They bring from their background of public and behavioral health, community engagement, advocacy. We have folks with similar lived experience as communities with EJ concerns, myself included, and then even some of the technical expertise as it relates to the work that MDE does around permitting and water quality and air monitoring, et cetera. We also brought along Alex Lima, who you see on the screen there, who is fluent in Spanish, opening up our engagement with another community, which we have not historically been engaged with. So the team, as you see there, is Noble Smith and Nevin Edwards, our environmental justice coordinators. Executive assistant is Katie Walker. And then our civic, community, and public engagement coordinators are Alex Lima and Ardina Holland. So that is the team. And I'll say, look out for the newsletter. It'll be quarterly. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we recently did was rebranded and relaunched the MDE Environmental Justice Screening Tool. So you see it is now called the MDE Enviro Screen, MD Enviro Screen, little play on words there. And that is because it contains more information that are relevant to our communities and aligns more succinctly with the different laws that were passed with its formation. So the tool helps identify and assess communities with our environmental justice concerns, but it now also includes the climate impact portion to the tool. And we have laid out the map so we can see clearly what communities are overburdened and underserved. There's an ability to look at child poverty. You can also bring in your own mapping layers into the tool to overlap it so that you can micro-target areas by which you want to get resources to in order to effectuate change. We are currently doing public informational sessions about the tool. We've had 2 already, and they have been recorded, and they'll be available and are available on our website currently. But also on October 29th, we'll be having another public webinar at 10 a.m. And I'll share those details with you, Ava, and you're welcome to share it all with the team. But what we do there is just walk you through the tool, how to utilize it, different ways in which you can use the data. Currently, so I did a thing, right, with the tool. I had so much data available, I kind of broke IMAP. And if you know IMAP, it's a platform by which folks can download the layers and use them for their own purposes. And when we went to go put that up for you all so you can have access and be able to bring down the different layers, we kind of broke it. but now it's fixed. We have more capacity there, and then and by the end of the week, you'll be able to do public downloads of the data that is housed within this tool itself. And you know how impactful this is because recently at the federal level, the screening tools have all gone away, especially around environmental justice. Not only have the tools been going away, some of the data, source data has also disappeared and not been made available to the public. So this is, this is Maryland's take on that. And then there's different indicators that have been included. We worked with the Department of Health to bring in all of the appropriate health layers. We did different outreach and user testing, so it's very much more user friendly as a tool to engage with. So I hope if you have the opportunity, take the moment to play around with the tool, or at least join us on one of our informational sessions. Next slide, please. All right, so what does environmental justice kind of mean in the Maryland Department of Environment and within our space and kind of behind the curtain? One of the things I will note is that just recently in July of this year, Governor Moore signed the Valuing Opportunity, Inclusion, and Community Equity Executive Order, which establishes a unified approach to promoting environmental justice in Maryland. It calls for a significant number of state agencies to work together to figure out how do we foster a whole government approach to advancing environmental justice and helping communities that have historically bore disproportionate burden from pollution. So if you think about that as a tool in our toolkit to further advance our initiatives to have everyone benefit from environment, that was a key piece of work by the governor. And it pairs very well with my work here at MDE. In our place, we're creating space and opportunities for applicants and communities to communicate with the department. And if you've been in this space before, it tends to be easier for an applicant for something to engage with us than the communities that are impacted. So we're kind of flipping that on its head. We know that this dialogue is critical to make sure all impacted parties have a voice throughout the process. And, when you bring in unique perspectives, you'll be surprised at how many solutions that you can find that are agreeable to all parties and no one is left behind. For our permitting processes itself, we have been working to make our public hearings and meetings, informational meetings, more accessible and inclusive. We've added hybrid options. We're started later. We're added translation services in communities where we know that there may be folks with limited English proficiency. In some cases, there can be refreshments, ways in which people can get we can assist people with getting to the meetings, really trying to make it more accessible, putting them in locations where communities can get to. And in addition, for the sites that are permitted, we have been working with our Attorney General's office to take enforcement actions against violators of their conditions of the permit. We've been taking that really seriously, and in recent, you might see it in the news often, there are usually settlements in the millions of dollars against some of these companies, some of which are in Baltimore, with some of the money going back to the community so that they can mitigate some of the impacts caused by the violations. So internally, we're working on strategies to continue to allot resources to communities that are most impacted by environmental injustices, develop policies and prioritize equity, leverage resources and expertise, collect and analyze data to ensure that policies and programs are effectively addressing the needs of the community. And that is key. As I do things, I ask for feedback. Is it working? Making sure that we know that. Raise awareness about environmental benefits and hazards, their impacts, and the importance of taking action through education and outreach. So we offer education, outreach, technical assistance, things of that nature. Next slide, please. So with everything happening at the federal level, a lot of folks say, Anika, kind of, what are you guys doing now? We're working. We're still doing the work, in short. And we're working internally and intentionally to ensure EJ considerations are centered in the decision-making process and that EJ policies are robustly enforced, right? So we're not backing down from that. Additionally, we're collaborating with other states to develop regional partnerships that prioritize implementation and investment in communities affected by climate change and environmental injustice. We are also co-creating solutions with communities themselves. I'll get into it in a little bit about our engagement, but we're going to communities, we're asking, what's the change that you want to see? And then we're working to see how we can make that a reality based on our authorities and our sphere of influence. Next slide, please. All right. Sorry, there's a little bit of delay on my end. So ways to support our work and what we do here at MDE. I would say attend environmental justice listening sessions and community meetings when we have them. Right now, there are none scheduled, but what we have been doing is offering meet and greets and community meeting with your organizations or community. So you can make a request. You can either send it to the EJ email, or you can go to the EJ landing page and go contact us. There's a form there that you can fill out. And me and my team will either set up a virtual or in-person meeting to meet you and your community, you and your organization. It's a little bit one-on-one, but we get to give a little bit of give and take. You provide input. You tell me about your interactions with MDE. What do you want to see change? What's your desire? And you'll be surprised at the relationship building that happens there and the trust and the synergy that we find. Provide input on permits and policies. That is a big one. That's how you be part of the decision-making process, the structural decision-making process. The other thing, collaborate with us. We collaborate on grants. We can we can give you a letter of support. We can actually be part of the grant. I know Ava knows this. She's probably seen me too many times to ask about collaborations and ways that we can go in on grants. But we do that not only with other local government and other state agencies, but we also do that with grassroots organizations, regional nonprofits. If there's a synergy there, we can definitely utilize our tools. So speaking of EnviroScreen, please attend the trainings, play around with the tool, give us your feedback, and the other data that we collect. MDE collects a lot of data, of water quality, air quality, blah, blah. And to be frank, people hear me say it's your data. So if you want that data, you want to interact with it, you want to understand what it does and says for your community, please reach out. We can work on collaborating, getting that data to you, or collaborating on ways to collect different data. But again, the EnviroScreen tool also incorporates a lot of layers that you can play around with and get to know this. And then, of course, report environmental concerns. If you have environmental concern, report it. You'll be surprised at how many folks that I've engaged with since I've been here that have been reporting concerns that have never done it in the past. And once they have reported them and we were able to legitimize the complaints, change happens. So if you're seeing something, even if you don't know what it is, we'll investigate and we'll end where we are. But just wanted to highlight ways in which you can support the work that we do here at MDE. And I think my last slide is just a thank you and any questions for me. And I'm sorry if I went over. Just trying.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. I guess it doesn't look like we have any questions currently. Give it one more second just in case. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that information. It was very timely, pertinent, and we can go and move on to the next speaker, which will be South Baltimore Community Land Trust. Shawand Shashana Campbell. I'm sorry if I got that incorrect. From the South Baltimore Community Land Trust, and she's their environmental justice coordinator.
Hi, everybody, and yes, it is Shashonda. You're fine. I am with the South Baltimore Community Land Trust. You can go to the next slide. So at the Land Trust, our vision, of course, is community-led development without displacement, and a support to a zero waste transition. And so we have been very dedicated to trying to look at what we do with our waste and how we are disposing of it in a healthy way. And how could we actually transform that to things like composting, reusing, recycling our natural resources, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a few. You can go to the next slide. So I do want to talk about our housing work. So a lot of times I got started in this work when I was in high school as a part of Free Your Voice, which was a student-led group out of Benjamin Franklin High School in South Baltimore. We were doing a lot of outreach to people. A lot of the intersecting issues that we would see was a housing crisis that was happening. And so people were moving left or right, whether it was to the house down the block. And so permanent affordable housing just seemed to be a really big issue. And so we became a land trust so we can actually do housing and give it housing at 30 to 50% area medium income, so people can actually own homes in their community. And not only that, we are creating also passive housing, which is just more of a standard around zero waste, especially in communities that are dealing with a lot of environmental harms to their air, where you think about it like an insulated cup compared to a regular home. That would just be a regular coffee mug. And so it just helps them with utilities and making that more affordable, which makes sense, of course, in a low income community. And so that's the rendering of one of our homes that's actually in that photo that is being worked on. A few of them should actually be done by the end of this year. And we already have one person that was able to purchase one of our homes. So that was a really big win for us. You can go to the next slide. So for our environmental work in zero waste, South Baltimore is a community that has a lot of toxic industries, inclusive of the Bresco incinerator, that is the #1 air polluter in Baltimore. And not only that, it has a medical waste incinerator, which is also one of the largest, and an open air coal pile that had an explosion in 2021 around Christmas time in the new year. And then over 70 other permitted industry facilities that's there. That's just adding to that harms, which I'll talk about cumulative impacts and what that actually means to these residents that's living in the area. And so, of course, we put forth real alternatives that actually is good for our environment and also our health, and then policies that can actually make them sustainable. I'll talk a little bit more about. You can go to the next slide. So one of the things that we called for as a first solution in alternatives is composting. Composting been around for many, many years, decades, right? Our ancestors knew about composting. So I think it's just going back to our roots of knowing that that's how you can deal with food waste. You put it back in the ground, freeze the soil for your community, as Compost Collective would say. When our food waste is being burnt, it is creating CO2. And then when it is being put into our landfill, it's creating methane, which are two really big greenhouse gases that are adding to the climate crisis and global warming. And so just really focusing on how do we start diverting waste that we are currently disposing of in a way we don't need to with these toxic machineries. And so we also got a couple, you can go back to that slide, sorry. I'm almost done, but we had talked to a lot of institutions who were actually interested in getting their food out of the waste stream. Institutions like Hopkins, which is one of the bigger institutions in Baltimore, who had also pledged that if we had gotten a compost facility here in Baltimore City, that they would send food waste there. And then also the city working on getting a facility up that will be addressing, yard waste first, and then other things that will be also addressing food waste as different options. So those are some of the alternatives, but of course we're still looking for how do we do more reusing, recycling, and then also looking at the design of products like single-use plastics, for example, how they're not really created except with the end disposal of being landfilled or burned. You can go to the next slide now. All right, so the Fresco incinerator, like I said earlier, is the #1 air polluter in Baltimore. It is also where we're trying to divert a lot of that food waste that's being sent there. It was classified as Tier 1 renewable energy for a while in our portfolio standards at the state level, which was, of course, an injustice because it is not a green machinery. And so as part of the Mid-Atlantic Justice Coalition, we begin that efforts to reform that Maryland Renewable Portfolio Standard to exclude incineration. And that was a long journey, many sessions, but finally last session, it was passed. So incineration will be removed from the RPS. It will no longer be looked at like things like wind and solar. And so we're able to actually prioritize those things as solutions rather than prioritizing toxic machineries. And for that bill to pass, we had a lot of support, even for the city. The city submitted favorable for that particular bill. And so I think like that was one of also a success. You can go to the next slide. So of course, that's not the end. We still have a lot of work to do. These communities are still being overburdened with pollution. And so one of the things that we have been working on as a part of MAGIC also is the Trash Act, which is looking at cumulative impacts in a real way, because right now when we have permits for these facilities, they are being permitted in their silos. They're not looked at as what they're adding to the existing burden and how they're all playing how they are adding to that. And so we really needed to have policies that supported that. One of the things I do want to share is a story that when I was in high school, there was supposed to be another incinerator that was going to be built in Curtis Bay, less than a mile away from our school. It was going to be burning 2 times the amount of the Bresco incinerator, which is the #1 air polluter. So it would have easily transitioned to that machine to be been a #1 in a community that already had all these other facilities. And I just thought, like, how is this possible that this continues, like that we can even do this? That is crazy. And so the fact that we didn't already have policies that would protect communities from being overburdened in that way was kind of scary. And so we all started, of course, there has been a lot of different times when people have put cumulative impact policies out that has not been passed. But we are back to do the same thing again and hoping that we can actually get it passed through session with the support of different agencies. Relax, buddy. With different support of different agencies to be able to work with communities to figure out the main points being that the law would apply to renewables expansions, looking at water and air permits, but also that they would be looking at doing an existing burden report, that they would be having to say like what they're adding to, again, that existing burden and not just what they're doing in their silos, and then being able to make a decision of denying or accepting that permit based off the community that they're in and what that community is overburdened with, which is a really big deal. And so that's what we're working a lot on right now. You can go to the next slide. For the wrap up. So I think the way to support this policy, of course, is people reaching out to their legislators, just talking about it, and how it is important that we have this policy passed around the time when the bill is being heard. During session, verbal and written testimony would be helpful. And then just support the bill in that way. And I think that would be all for my presentations. Of course, I forgot, and of course, endorsements from our local government, the same way we did with the RPS, just to support residents and community in trying to get this bill passed. And that's all. Hope I was in time. I try to do that fast.
Excellent timing. Jared, you're on mute. Jared, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, if any of the commissioners have any questions, great presentation. Thank you very much. All right. In case, we'll move on to our next speaker. I want to introduce Iman Habib from Progressive Maryland.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you to the Department of Planning and AVA for inviting me to speak. I'm super humbled and honored to be here with you guys today. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Iman Habib, Climate Policy Analyst with Progressive Maryland. And you can go ahead to the next slide. Super excited to talk about how we're addressing environmental injustice in Baltimore City. But before I do that, just a little background on kind of who Progressive Maryland is. We're a grassroots power building organization that really works to put low income and Black and Brown communities in decision making spaces, especially when we're talking about housing, healthcare, and of course environmental justice policies. Specifically in terms of environmental justice, we're really committed to transitioning to clean, renewable energy, and really just, again, putting overburdened and underserved communities in these decision-making spaces. We do have chapters all across Maryland, but our environmental justice work specifically is kind of concentrated in Baltimore City. Thank you. And these are some of the spaces that we sort of occupy in the environmental justice space. So we're a part of the Maryland Grassroots Environmental Justice Working Group, which is essentially a coalition of different grassroots organizations that are working to advance various environmental justice policies. We oversee 3 different subcommittees. So one of them is working to override the veto for the Renew Act, which is like the Polluters Pay Bill. We're also tracking the Cherish Act, which Shashonda mentioned in the previous presentation. And then finally, we also have a subcommittee that's working to really shut down the Bresco incinerator in Baltimore City and specifically just kind of pave the way towards, more waste, like diverting waste from the incinerator and working towards zero waste in the future. We're also part of the Maryland Environmental Justice Collaborative, which is very similar. We are a coalition of different grassroots organizations that are advancing other environmental justice policies, and those are still, they were just announced, so we're still kind of figuring out where we fit in that space. But we specifically employ the listen, lead, share approach when we do grassroots organizing. So it's a little bit different, but that's another space that we occupy. And then finally, we're also a part of the Climate Partners Steering Committee, and we're contributing to the Community Engagement Task Force, which is currently rolling out awards for various climate justice projects that different community-based organizations are carrying out. You can go ahead to the next slide. So some of our previous work involved removing subsidies for waste incineration. So successfully, we removed waste to energy from Maryland's renewable portfolio standard. And as Shashonda mentioned in the previous presentation, this was a joint effort across a lot of different environmental advocates and a lot of different organizations that have been really pushing for this for several years. But happy to see that success kind of play out this year. We, like our specific environmental justice task force, contributed to this by door knocking in Cherry Hill, Brooklyn, and Westport. We also bird dogged Senator President Ferguson last summer. And we also organized a rally earlier this year in support of the bill. And finally, we also kind of helped the City Council adopt a resolution in support of that policy. And really, at Progressive Maryland, we try to, uplift community voices. So in the next few slides, while I have the mic, I'd really like to highlight some stories from some of our members. So if you go to the next slide, here is a photo of our February rally where we have one of our community members, Shanae Thomas, sharing her story about living close to Bresco, which was super impactful to a lot of us. If you go to the next slide, there's also a story from Mary Randall, who's a senior citizen from Westport. She lives a couple miles from Bresco, and she previously suffered from kidney cancer, and she has a lot of family members in the area that are living close to Bresco who also passed away, unfortunately. But she was very kind and brave enough to testify at the hearings and really share her story and share that with everyone. And those sort of stories, they really, they're super impactful, and it's very saddening to hear that, but it's equally like galvanizing in a way because a lot of people resonate with her story, unfortunately. And if you go to the next slide, we also have a story from Martina Wilson, who said this quote. It really like stuck with me. She said, the incineration is in my bones. And I remember initially I was kind of like, what does that mean? And she shared that she was diagnosed with osteoporosis, which was, weakened bone structure. It can lead to fractures. And it made sense because she said she lives close to Bresco. And if you look at the pollutants that are released from incinerators, we see that lead is one of the primary pollutants, which is directly linked with that. And so I just wanted to highlight some of these stories to shed light on kind of why we do this work and why it's important to us. But if you move on to the next slide, yeah, kind of our current work is really to see that incinerator shut down. Just after hearing a lot of these stories, it's very imperative that we kind of see the successful seizing of that facility continuing to operate. And a lot of different South Baltimore community members have expressed that they want it to shut down. And so right now we're kind of conversing with different legislators about various policies that would help divert trash from away from Bresco. And we're also working to allocate funds for other like zero waste efforts in the city budget, whether that has to do with composting or recycling efforts, et cetera. And I'm actually going to drop a fact sheet if you want to be informed on kind of what we're working on and some of the facts surrounding Bresco. Because I don't know a lot of people know a lot about Bresco, and there's a lot of different moving parts, but I just wanted to put that in the chat for anyone who wants to reference that. And if you go to the next slide, back in September or last month, we helped develop a compost report. We disseminated a survey that kind of collected, sentiment towards composting in the city of Baltimore. And we distributed it amongst like the primary Baltimore-based composting operations, just to kind of gain their insight, their experience with waste management and that sort of stuff. We found that more than 20% of the waste that's going to Bresco is capable of being composted. We also found that composting creates 4 times more jobs than does waste incineration and 2 times more jobs than does landfilling. And we're really hoping to, perhaps replicate the efforts that are in Prince George's County. I know someone spoke about the construction of the composting facility at Bowley's Lane. So we're hoping that maybe perhaps the city can implement a similar revenue model. And that's something that we're still kind of figuring out, but just kind of excited to see where that opportunity lies. We also found, based on the survey and what different folks had shared, that they were very interested in the city kind of allocating more funds towards durable bins, composting education, compost pickup services, and engagement with various entities like restaurants and schools and other businesses of operation. And I just noticed Timothy Ford gave a reaction in the chat. He also helped us a lot with that report as he's working with the Prince George's County composting facility. So just wanted to give him a shout out as well. You can go on to the next slide. And so this composting report, those details we'll be sharing during the Baltimore Climate Summit, which is happening on Monday, November 3rd. That event is going on from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we're not quite sure exactly what session we're going to hold within that, but we're hoping to kind of disseminate the information that was in that report during that event. So if that's something you're interested in, you can definitely get in contact with me and I can add you to that invite. And this is the address and the information on that. And finally, if you go to the next slide, honestly, this campaign to shut down Bresco, we're very much still in a research phase. There's a lot of information that we've come across, but there's a lot of unanswered questions. So as of now, we're really trying to work with DPW to influence their upcoming city budget. And we're also working with different legislators to hear about various policies that they're working to prioritize that would divert waste away from Bresco. So if that's something that interests you, or community members that are excited about this or passionate about this and want to contribute, feel free to email me, get in touch with us. We do have an upcoming Environmental Justice Task Force meeting that's happening on October 27th. We don't have the details ironed out as of yet, but if you're interested, please do email me, reach out, and we can get you engaged. But thank you guys so much for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourselves. I don't know if we have time for that, or just drop them in the chat. But super happy to be here, and thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Iman. Any questions? Okay. Well, to keep things going, I'm going to go to our next speaker from the League of Conservation Voters, Elicio Magos from Chispa, Maryland, Baltimore community organizer and manager.
Hi everyone. Eva, you didn't get my presentation?
Yeah, we're pulling it up. It was a PDF, so there we go.
Thank you. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Eva, for having us here today. It's truly an honor to be here presenting the work that Chispa is currently doing in Baltimore. They mentioned, my name is Elisa Magos Gonzalez. I'm the community organizing manager for the Baltimore region of Chispa, Maryland, a program of the Maryland Legal Conservation Voters Education Fund. You can go, which our mission is a healthy environment for everyone in Maryland. And our mission is to educate and activate people to take equitable and justice political actions for clean water, healthy air, and climate resilient communities. We're not just one organization. We are, I forgot to put this on the slides, but we are three organizations, which Maryland Legal Conservation Education Fund is a C3 organization. That our main focus is to educate people in Maryland to become informed and inspire environmental advocates and voters. And the second one is our C4 organization, which is Maryland Legal Conservation Voters. That our goal is to leverage advocacy, lobbying, and voters, activating voters to shape policies and elections. And our third one is our PAC organization, where we provide financial support to endorse political candidates. So those are our three organizations in just one organization. But the need, we have CHISPA is, like I mentioned, is a program of the launched by the Maryland Legal Conservation Voters Education Fund. In 2014, CHISPA ensures the Maryland Latino families and community leaders are a powerful voice to protect our air, land, water, public health, and a better future. Because we saw that there was a lot of lack of representation when it comes to Latino voices when it comes to environmental justice. So that's why we created CHISPA, where we provide the tools to Latino communities to advocate for themselves, for their needs, and we saw that a lot of Latino communities were more concerned about climate change than other communities. So that's why we decided to launch this program in 2014. You can go to the next slide. Our mission and advocacy focus, like I mentioned, Maryland LCV Education Funds works to protect Maryland's air, land, water, and community through education, organizing, and policy advocacy. So we just not we focus on grassroots groups to activate them and create the start the base ground activation from the ground to elevate their voices, to bring those voices that have been left behind for so long. We provide education is trainings, workshops, trainings, so they can feel more comfortable when we are in front of legislatures or something like that. But our key focus areas are clean energy and electrification, clean transportation, climate justice, and community empowerment. We are also work really close with South Baltimore with the community impacts and other campaigns. For example, Clean Buses for Healthy Niños. Those are policy driven by community members. CHISPA, Maryland empowers Latino communities for climate justice. We have we launched our CHISPA program in Baltimore back in 2023. So we've been in Baltimore for 2 years now. We have formed 3 committees, which one is in Baltimore City, one in South Baltimore, and the other one in Baltimore County, where we meet monthly and we provide different workshops, or we invite legislators to come and talk to them so they can hear from them directly about their concerns and changes that they want to see in their communities. We are that bridge of communication with our promotores and our leaders and decision makers. We also host, or we have a promotores training, which is a 8-week training for community members that wants to get more involved with CHISPA. That we're going deeply about more environmental justice, what's environmental justice, the changes that they want to see, and how our Latino communities have been left behind for so long, and things that they can do to improve these legislations, or be part of the voices to be on the table when they're making this decision on environmental justice that will affect our community. You can go to the next slide. Building power in Latino communities. Like I mentioned, we do a lot of community outreach. So far, we have reached about more than 600 community residents this year. We have educate and empower Latino communities, sharing information about home electrification, solar benefits, and how to access federal programs through the IRA. We know that those programs are now longer available, but we still try to be the bridge of any available resources that our community may take advantage of. So we are the bridge as well to sharing those information. And we also have a campaign called Clean Buses, Healthy Niños campaign, which pretty much we are asking the Board of Education to transition all their diesel school buses into electric school buses. Thanks to the advocacy for our promotoras. 2 years ago, Baltimore City decided to apply for some for funding available from the EPA, and thanks to they were granted the award, and thanks to that, they were able to transition 25 diesel school buses to electric school buses. So they currently have 25 electric school buses, but we are continuing to push so they can continue this transition into they have a completely electric fleet of electric school buses. This is driven by community because as we know, transportation is the number one polluted that causes pollution on the air. So it's a great opportunity to start by with this, as our little ones are the ones that are more affected, as their body's still developing, their lungs is still developing, and when they're on the buses, they are breathing all the smoke that comes from the pipeline. So those are that campaign. that we're currently working as well on. That was driven by community members since 2014, since CHISPA was launched in Maryland LCB. And also, we do a lot of testifying in the Board of Education. We have done rallies in Annapolis to advocate for funding to continue the transition of electric school buses. You can go to the next slide. How can you join us? We meet monthly in Baltimore City. We have our monthly meetings every second Thursday of the month in Baltimore City. You can come and join us on those meetings. You can also volunteer us when it comes to canvassing, to outreach events such as advocacy campaigns. For example, right now we have this campaign going on. Like I mentioned, we are collecting postcards to send to the board members to ask them to adopt a resolution to continue the transition of these school buses to electric. You can also share your story. You can come and join us sharing your story to amplify your voices about clean air, clean energy, and transportation. And also you can follow us on all our social media, where we are really active, where we share all of our upcoming events in whatever we have, trainings, workshops, town halls, sometimes, so you can come and be part of this movement as well. Or also you can check our website, where you can join our monthly newsletter, so you can be more aware of all of our work that we're doing, not just CHISPA, but all our Maryland LCB organization. With that, that's all I have. If you have any question, please let me know, or you can just put it on the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I'll open the floor for any questions. Licio, if there are any questions for you. Okay. Well, last but not least, I'll invite our final speaker on, Jose Castellanos and Catherine Somoza from the Chesapeake Bay Trust.
Hi everybody, I don't know why my video's not working. I'm so sorry. But
we can hear you okay, Jose.
Okay.
Hopefully y'all can hear me too.
Yeah, we can hear you, Kathy.
I guess real quick, I did see one other organization before us, but just wanted to check that we are good to go, because I had seen the Better Health, Better Life organization in the agenda before us. But we're good to go?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right. Thank you all so much thank you, Ava, for inviting us, first of all, to Ava and the team. I'm Kathy Somoza. I'm a Restoration Program Manager at the Trust, and joined by my colleague, Jose, who looks like he has his video on, but just seeing the background right now. But we can hear you. So for those that don't know about the Trust, our mission is, well, so first of all, we're a grant-making organization established in 1985 by the Maryland General Assembly. And because of that kind of origin and nature of our organization, we don't do advocacy or fund directly advocacy, but can fund a lot of the things leading up to that, which I've heard a lot about today. I'm really glad and grateful to hear about the groups doing that important work on the ground. But we are a funder in this space, so our mission is to engage and empower diverse groups to take actions that will enrich our local natural resources and the communities of the Bay region. And I can see you, Jose. Our vision is that the Bay and local watersheds are healthy and safe, that our waters are fishable and swimmable, and that all local communities benefit from these healthy resources, and that everyone participates in restoring and protecting our natural resource treasures. So emphasis on everyone, because I am also really proud to lead the diversity, equity, inclusion work at the Trust, and truly, by everyone, we mean everyone. And so we know that we cannot do this work without having, from the folks that live in this Bay region or work or play in this region, by not having them involved, we can't do this work. And so truly we mean everyone, and that is baked into the core of how we conduct our, and move forward our diversity, equity, inclusion work. You can go to the next slide. So just quick history of DEI at the Trust, and I'm going to try to go a little bit fast because it's two of us talking for this one. So our history, we started in 2000 with the Minorities Environment Initiative. So that was really our first kind of formal initiative to tackle the fact that, there is underrepresentation. There's also historical exclusion of certain communities, specifically communities of color in this work. So that was in 2000. And then in 2007 to 2008, we held a series of listening sessions across counties, including Dorchester County, Prince George's, Montgomery, specifically, again, geared towards learning from low-income communities of color and hearing from them on exactly, what this field and movement and work means to them and their role and what they see as a role and how we can better support them in engaging with us and being, partners in this work. And from those listening sessions, and from that input, we developed the first diversity initiative work plan in 2008. And that was our first kind of guiding document for, putting down on paper what this meant to the Trust. And in 2008 also, we formed our first diversity committee, and that was led by our board at the time. And in 2013, that diversity committee evolved into the Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee, and that expanded, importantly, to not just include board, but also external experts, representatives, community members across the region. And so now having kind of not just the Trust voices, but also, the community voices baked into that advisory committee. And then in 2018, we partnered with a couple organizations, including the Choose Clean Water Coalition. We did a survey of both funders and also, nonprofit organizations across the region. We held listening sessions, and from that, we, in partnership with those other organizations, created the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice in Action Guide. And we're really proud of that. And that's a, kind of a foundational document for our region that captures both, the funder and nonprofit perspective. It is a little outdated at this point, so I think we're right now in progress of updating that guide again and doing, surveys currently. So more to come on that. And then in 2019, we realized that we had this wonderful Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee, and they were really charged with the strategic vision of this work. But we were missing the component of people on the ground actually implementing and operationalizing that work. So that is where our, at the time, Diversity and Inclusion, now DEI Action Committee was born. And the committee is fully Trust staff, and our job is to operationalize the vision and kind of strategic plan that comes from our advisory committee. We work a lot in partnership, so it's kind of a two-way street there. And so I get to lead that committee and also serve as a liaison between the advisory and the action committee at the Trust. Our present day, so the work continues, as I've heard a lot from different presenters today. As you all know, the political climate has changed, and but for us, we've used this time to kind of reaffirm what this work means to us, and that's why I really try to highlight for y'all that our mission and vision has always revolved around everyone being included in this work, and it's just who we are, and we can't do this work any other way. And so for us, whether we call it DEI or whether we call it something else, this work will continue, in maybe a different way, a different shape or form, but it continues, and it has to, because it's, again, baked into who, we know ourselves to be as the Trust and what our mission is and the vision that we are steering towards. So we'll go to the next slide. Oh, okay, that's not supposed to look like that. I'm sorry that we didn't catch that before. But so what does this look like in action? And again, just real quick going through this. So it's really tiny, but the three kind of categories here are programs, policy, and procedures, right? So what programs do we leverage? What policies do we have, and how do we procedurally do our work in a way that puts our work into action and operationalizes what our DEI values? So we have programs like the Mini Community Engagement Restoration Program that was intentionally revised a few years ago to be capped to only be eligible to new applicants. And so there is a pot of funding every single year available only to those who have never applied to the trust before, and that is intentional to expand our audience and who we are engaging. There's other programs like capacity building that focus on, among other things, funding DEI strategic plans and things of that nature. And so that is how we're building capacity of other organizations to do this work in partnership with us across the region. Policy, so we've made a number of policy revisions over the year, and that continues, but things like we have a policy on ensuring that our review committee, so the folks that, gather and review our proposals, that that committee reflects the region that is going to benefit from the funding. So for example, if it's Montgomery County, then having a committee, building a committee that reflects demographics of Montgomery County, for example, is part of our policy. And then procedures, just the way that we do things, right? So things like outreach, very important. We use different models, but one of those models is the connector group, where we it's a contractual opportunity that we put out, and we pay organizations that are the kind of like grassroots experts that have connections with community, and and are the trusted messenger of that community, importantly, and pay them to do outreach for different programs, and partner with them to do that outreach and provide that technical assistance to our programs. So in that way, trying to expand again who we're advertising to and who we're engaging in our programs. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so sorry that this is like so wonky looking. So just quickly highlighting the Healthy Environment, Healthy Communities grant program. So I heard Anika say before, something that kudos to MDE, they've really been doing in the past few years is securing settlements across the state of Maryland. And we were tapped to manage a couple of funding from two different settlements, the Patapsco and Back River Wastewater Treatment Plant, and also the Curtis Bay Medical Waste Incinerator. There were two separate settlements related to two environmental incidents. And from that came the Healthy Environment, Healthy Communities Grant Program. And we also, I have on here Jones Falls, that was kind of a separate pot of funding, separate program, but same kind of umbrella family of programs of the Healthy Environment, Healthy Communities Grant Program. And that was resulting from a consent decree of Fleischmann Vinegar's alleged unauthorized discharges of pollutants, including acetic acid in the Jones Falls watershed. So we can move on. So here's what the program building steps looked like for us. We started with listening sessions. We realized from the beginning that it was important to hear from communities as far as their experience and also what they wanted the program to look like. So we started with listening sessions in February 2024. As we developed the request for proposals, we held office hours to show slices of the work and got really important, much needed feedback on criteria. So for example, we heard that, we typically focus on water quality. We heard that for the Curtis Bay community, air quality also is really important and should be considered in how proposals are scored. So we built that into the RFP. In the application period, as usual, we held information sessions, but we also tried intentionally to, go to our community where the community was gathering already. So existing community meetings, but also setting up in-person events and sharing about the program and offering technical assistance. And then in the review stage, we're really, really proud and grateful to have had members of the community serve as reviewers. So that is how throughout the process we tried to, as much as possible, have it be an iterative process of engaging the community, getting their feedback, going back to them, sharing a slice of the work, and then over and over until we got to awarding projects. And so that's the next slide. So where are we now? So we made awards in February of this year, ended up with 45 total awards, 16 in the Curtis Bay and surrounding community, 20 in the Patapsco and Back River watersheds. And we fully spent all the funds available to us for the Curtis Bay and Patapsco River. And then in the Jones Falls watershed, we made 9 awards, and we still have some funding that we're looking to spend down, and we'll be reopening that program soon. And some highlights, project highlights include the trash wheel. We funded community cleanups, green infrastructure to, provide cleaner water, but also cleaner air. workforce development programs, and community science and monitoring. And South Baltimore Community Land Trust is one of our grantees among many others in Curtis Bay and around the Baltimore County, Baltimore City area. And if we go to the next slide. So here's just some photos that we have from projects so far. So some more grantees, and I manage specifically the Curtis Bay funding. So these are my Curtis Bay grantees and photos that I have so far. So Filbert Street Garden, they were awarded for a small scale stormwater garden that's capturing water and also reducing the amount of chicken manure that's going off, and that would potentially cause pollution. So that's great to see that on their farm. The Complete Player Charity was awarded to do education and litter cleanups with youth. So that is a photo of them at a cleanup. And then Drink at the Well. Their program, I believe, is Hans Honey. So they're training beekeepers and providing, long-term jobs revolving around sustainable beekeeping. So that's a photo of one of the beekeepers. And then Pasadena Sport Fishing. Their expertise is in fishing and holding fishing events and having fishing be the connection through which people engage with the environment. So that is a photo from their fall fishing derby. And I'll pass it off to Jose.
Thank you, Kathy. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Okay, well, I'll try to make it quick. This is the Mid-Atlantic Environmental Justice Fund. Is another of our environmental justice initiatives here at the Trust. This is a grant program that leverages forestry to address environmental justice issues throughout the Mid-Atlantic region. It's not just focused on Maryland, but all the other states too. We are funded by a $17.5 million grant from the USDA Forest Service, plus around $180,000 in private contributions that we were able to fundraise. Our first round launched last December, and we have awarded 24 projects across the region, totaling over $4.5 million. A big chunk of those projects are located in Baltimore City, actually. Next slide, please. So this EJ program is particular because it focuses on forestry, which is commonly used to address EJ issues. If you see environmental injustice as as the product of an unfair distribution of impacts and of burdens, well, this EJ fund works to amend some of those injustices through the democratization of the benefits of a robust tree canopy. So we all know those. It's better air, it's better water, it's better temperatures, better community health, also more community engagement around the trees, also beautified neighborhoods and reinvigorated green workforce, local green workforce. It's important to highlight again, as Kathy did before, that we, as a semi-state agency, we cannot fund any advocacy or lobbying work. But from a grant making perspective, we believe that there is a lot that we can do in the EJ space to get funding back to the communities that have been historically underserved and overburdened. Because more direct investment in those communities means supporting economic self-determination, means environmental education, means community compensations, and those are also principles of environmental justice. Next slide, please. Well, that's just some of the tracks that we found: capacity building, tree canopy implementation, and workforce development. But I'm not going to focus on that today. So next slide, please. The most important part of what I want to share today with you is that this is a participatory fund. That means that the idea is to cede part of the decision-making power to the very communities who will be impacted by those funding decisions. So the process is primarily done by the involvement of our EJ community partners. You can see them on the screen. Shout out actually to Shoshana and the SBCLT, who are partners of the fund for the Baltimore region. They serve as liaisons with communities that have historically and consistently been left out of decisions that have impacted their health, their livelihoods. This is similar to the connector groups that Kathy was sharing with us before. Each of these partners are strategically placed throughout the region to assist applicants through each stage of the grant application process. And well, yeah, even if this is about ceding some of the power around decision making, we know that there are limitations, mostly imposed by the federal nature of the funding. That's very important, and also by the nature of this grant program being itself funded by a grant. So there's a scope of work that we still need to respond to. That we still need to respond to. And that cannot change too much. But that grant was actually written from the beginning by these partnerships. So from the beginning, from the creation of the application to USDA, we have operated in that conversation where we rely heavily on their partners' level of involvement. Next slide, please. So here you can see some of the aspects that the fund, some of the aspects of the fund that are designed from the beginning to be part of that collaborative process. The partnership is in charge of discussing and deciding on issues like the RFP, the request for proposals, how it is developed, how the technical review committee is selected, some strategies for outreach, for engagement of local community-based organizations, and also evaluation criteria. I would like to highlight now particularly the technical review committee. All members of that technical review committee, which are ultimately the people that recommend which applications should be chosen to be funded, those members are first all paid. We pay a small stipend for their participation, and the selection of the committee is in charge of all partners. So all partners, as part of the what they do for the fund, is selecting part of this technical review committee. So the final cohorts of those review committees include not only people who could be, considered like technical experts in a more traditional way, but also community representatives who will bring on the ground expertise about the different environmental justice issues that the Mid-Atlantic region faces. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah, sorry for the wonkiness there. These are just some of the results of this participatory process. We have been able to include, for example, new criteria for the scoring of the applications based on to prioritize applicants based on things like capacity and involvement with the EJ communities. We have been able to reframe the RFP to prevent scaring away organizations that perhaps don't have a lot of experience in forestry but are interested in these issues. We also proposed TRC screening and eligibility criteria, and we also included air quality monitoring as a possible add-on to the projects. And actually, this was something that SBCLT brought to the table because that's what they know, and from their conversations with the community-based organizations on the ground, people were asking for and were interested in doing as part of these kind of projects. So next slide. This is just a visual representation of how that looks like in the process looks like. This is the actual evaluation criteria table being discussed, highlighted. There's questions. There's all those are the partners' comments. This is how it looks like, the participatory process of this Mid-Atlantic Environmental Justice Fund. And that's what we wanted to share with you today. So thank you so much. You can go to the next slide, which is just thank you.
Okay. Thank you both for that great information. I'll open up the floor for questions if anyone has any.
Let me just say one more thing. Yeah. We're opening a second round of applications for the Mid-Atlantic Environmental Justice Fund by the first week of November. So keep an eye out for that.
Awesome. On that note, if there's nothing else, I just wanted to let's just see if there's any announcements that any commissioners or anyone else has to make, or Ava, if you have any calls to actions.
I thank all of our all of our speakers again this evening for sharing all of your amazing work taking place across the city and the state and all that leadership. We will have our next meeting on November 19th. And during that meeting, we'll be highlighting and celebrating some of our commissioners that are transitioning out of their role. And in December, we'll be hosting a social networking event. The details and the location are to be determined, but that will be an in-person meeting to take place. I believe the current date is December 17th. So thank you again to all our speakers, and we'll be posting the slides and the recording to our website. And make sure everyone has access to the information shared this evening. And much of the information we'll also be sharing it in future editions of our newsletter.
All right. Thanks, Ava. If there is nothing else, then I thank everyone for coming tonight and being a part of the meeting. And until next month, we will see you then.